is risen.
The Lord is risen indeed. Hallelujah.
Let us confess our sins against God and our neighbor. On page 79 of the prayer book. Most merciful God,
We confess that we have sinned against you in thought, word, and deed, by what we have done and by what we have left undone. We have not loved you with our whole heart. We have not loved our neighbors as ourselves. We are truly sorry and humbly repent. For the sake of your Son, Jesus Christ, have mercy on us and forgive us, that we may delight in your will and walk in your ways, to the glory of your name. Amen.
Lord, open our lips.
And our mouths shall proclaim your praise.
Glory to the Father,
And to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen.
The Venite is found on page 82 of the Book of Common Prayer, or at S35 in the front of the hymnal. Come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us shout for joy to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving, and with a loud shout to his song. For the Lord is a great God, and a great King of love. In his hands are the ends of the earth, and the height of his also. Thus his ways were created, and his hands have molded the dry land. Come, let us bow and bend the knee, and kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, and the sheep of his hand. Oh, that today you would offer to his voice. Please be seated for the readings.
Please join me in reading in unison Psalm number 30, found in your prayer book, or on page, found in the insert, or on page 621 in your prayer book, reading the refrain both before and after. You have restored my life, O Lord.
I will exalt you, O Lord,
because you have lifted me up,
and have not let my enemies triumph over me. O Lord my God, I cried out to you, and you restored me to health.
You brought me up, O Lord, from the dead.
You restored my life as I was going down to the grave. Sing to the Lord in service of his. Give thanks for the remembrance of his holiness.
For his wrath endures the twinkling of an eye,
His favor for a lifetime.
weeping may spend the night, but joy comes in the morning. While I felt secure, I said, I shall never be disturbed. You, Lord, with your favor, make me strong as mountains.
And I was filled with fear.
I cried to the Lord. I pleaded with the Lord, saying, what profit is there in my blood if I go down to the pit? With the dust praise you or declare your faithfulness? Hear, O Lord, and have mercy upon me. O Lord, be my helper. You have turned my wailing into dancing. You have put off my sackcloth and clothed me with joy. Therefore my heart sings to you without ceasing. O Lord my God, I will give you thanks forever. You have restored my first reading is from the 9th chapter of the book of Acts. Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any who belonged to the way, men or women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. Now, as he was going along and approaching Damascus, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" He asked, "Who are you, Lord?" The reply came, "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting. But get up and enter the city, and you will be told what to do." The men who were traveling with him stood speechless because they heard the voice but saw no one. Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he could see nothing. So they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. For 3 days he was without sight, and neither ate nor drank. Now there was a disciple in Damascus called Ananias. The Lord said to him in a vision, "Ananias?" He answered, "Here I am, Lord." The Lord said to him, "Get up and go to the street called Straight, and at the house of Judas look for a man of Tarsus named Saul. At this moment he is praying, and he has seen in a vision a man named Ananias come in and lay his hands on him so that he might regain his sight." But Ananias answered, "Lord, I have heard from many about this man, how much evil he has done to your saints in Jerusalem. And here he has authority from the chief priest to bind all who invoke your name." But the Lord said to him, "Go, for he is an instrument whom I have chosen to bring my name before Gentiles and kings and before the people of Israel. I myself will show him how much he must suffer for the sake of my name." So Ananias went and entered the house. He laid his hands on Saul and said, "Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus, who appeared to you on your way here, has sent me so that you might regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit." And immediately something like scales fell from his eyes, and his sight was restored. Then he got up and was baptized, and after taking some food, he regained his strength. For several days he was with the disciples in Damascus, and immediately he began to proclaim Jesus in the synagogues, saying, "He is the Son of God." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Please remain seated as we recite together the first Psalm of Isaiah, found in your prayer book on page 86. Surely
It is God who saves me. I will trust in him and not be afraid. For the Lord is my stronghold and my surety, and he will be my Savior. Therefore he shall draw water with rejoicing from the springs of salvation. And on that day he shall say, "Give thanks to the Lord and call upon his name. Make his deeds known among the peoples. See that they remember that his name is exalted. Sing the praises of the Lord, for he has done great things, and this is known in all the world. Cry aloud, inhabitants of Zion. Ring out your joy, for the great one in the midst of you is the Holy One of Israel. Glory to the Father, to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen.
The second reading is taken from the 5th chapter of the book of Revelations. I looked and I heard the voice of many angels surrounding the throne and the living creatures and the elders. They numbered myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, singing with full voice, "Worthy is the Lamb that was slaughtered to receive power and wealth and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing." Then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and in the sea and all that is in them, singing, "To the one seated on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and might forever and ever." And the 4 living creatures said, "Amen." And the elders fell down and worshipped. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Just join me in reciting the second song of Isaiah, also found in the prayer book on page 86.
Seek the Lord while he wills to be found. Call upon him when he draws near. Let the wicked forsake their ways, and the evil ones their thoughts. And let them turn to the Lord, and he will have compassion. And to our God, for he will richly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For the heavens will fall from heaven, and return not again, but water the earth, bringing forth life and giving breath, seed for sowing and bread for eating. So is my word that goes forth from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but it will accomplish that which I have purposed, and prosper in that for which I sent it. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen.
The third reading is taken from the 21st chapter of the book of John. Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias, and he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, I am going fishing. They said to him, we will go with you. They went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, children, you have no fish, have you? They answered him, no. He said to them, cast the net to the right side of the boat, and you will find some. So they cast it, and they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on some clothes, for he was naked, and jumped into the sea. But the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were not far from the land, only about 100 yards off. When they had gone ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, bring some of the fish that you have just caught. So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore, full of fish, 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. Now none of the disciples dared to ask him, who are you? Because they knew it was the Lord. Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them, and did the same with the fish. This was now the third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my lambs. A second time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, yes, Jesus, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, do you know me? Do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, feed my sheep. Very truly I tell you, when you were younger, you used to fasten your own belt and to go wherever you wish. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will fasten a belt around you and take you where you do not wish to go. He said this to indicate the kind of death by which he would glorify God. After this, he said to him, "Follow me." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The service continues as we recite together the third psalm of Isaiah, found in your prayer book on page 87. Arise, shine, for your light has come,
And the glory of the Lord has dawned upon you. For behold, darkness covers the land, deep gloom enshrouds the peoples. But over you the Lord will rise, and his glory will appear upon you. Nations will stream to your light, and kings to the brightness of your coming. Your gates will always be open. By day or night they are never shut. They will call you the city of the Lord, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel. Violence will no more occur in your land, ruin or destruction within your borders. You will call your walls salvation, and all your portals praise. The sun will no more be your light by day. By night it will not be the brightness of the moon. The Lord will be your everlasting light, and your God will be your glory. Glory to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen.
As is customary, this is a prepared sermon, and it's offered to us by the Reverend K. Sylvester, who is rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Tustin, California. In today's gospel story of breakfast on the beach, we enter further into the Easter season and the work of Easter, working out what it means to have resurrection set loose in the world, in the church, and in our lives. One of the oddest experiences of Easter is that we can feel empty after the graphic realities of Holy Week, bread broken, feet washed, thorns pressed into Jesus' scalp, crosses raised, a body laid in a newly hewn grave. Easter, by contrast, is about an absence. The body is no longer in the tomb, and we are left to work out what that means. Today's story makes it clear that one of the functions of resurrection life is restoration of relationship and deep forgiveness. Peter announces he's going fishing, and several of the disciples decide to go along. In prior chapters in the gospel, Peter has denied Jesus and fled from the scene of his crucifixion. Though it's clear that Peter loves Jesus without reservation, his fear has led him to distance himself from Jesus, and we are left to imagine his disappointment with himself and his guilt and shame. It seems that Peter has returned to what he knows. Amid the confusion and grief in the aftermath of the crucifixion, he feels most like himself aboard a fishing boat, handling the heavy nets throughout the cold night. His efforts are fruitless, though. After a night of fishing, the group has caught exactly no fish. On top of his grief and his sense of having failed Jesus, he is now confronted with failing at something he has done all of his life. But as the dawn breaks, the disciples see a man on the shore, and they see the smoke from a small fire. The stranger calls out to them and suggests something very odd. "Cast your nets on the other side of the boat," he shouts across the water. Surprisingly, the disciples comply, and suddenly the net is full to bursting with fish. Suddenly, Peter realizes that he has seen something like this before on a hillside. With thousands of people, he watched Jesus break bread and fish until they were all fed. He remembers a wedding in Canup
when water was turned into wine of the highest quality. The beloved disciple shouts, "It is the Lord." And Peter clambers toward the shore with his heart bursting with excitement. In fact, it is Jesus, and he invites him to come have breakfast, as though this was a normal morning after a night of fishing. The disciples shot looks of amazement at each other across the fire and wondered if this is real. The story provides a bookend to the Last Supper. This first breakfast changes the trajectory for the disciples from grief and confusion to purpose and mission. Everything Jesus said to the disciples before his crucifixion, and in John's Gospel he said a lot, is now coming to bear on the disciples and their purpose. But Jesus has some very specific business with Peter. It always bears repeating that Peter, in so many gospel stories, is a stand-in for us. His enthusiasm, awkwardness, lack of understanding, and enormous love for Jesus are just like our own. So when the gospel story focuses on Peter, it's fair to say that we are also part of the story. Before his arrest and crucifixion, Jesus told Peter that he would deny him, and sadly his prediction comes true. Peter is accosted repeatedly by bystanders as he waits outside while Jesus is being interviewed, and each time he denies knowing Jesus. He is absent at the crucifixion. He is among the disciples who met behind locked doors out of fear. Now Jesus speaks to him directly. "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Jesus asks him 3 times, and 3 times Peter affirms his love for Jesus. Each time Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep." Peter is given the opportunity to undo his denial of Jesus with 3 affirmations of his love. Jesus tells him what to do with that love. Feed the flock. Though the word forgiveness never appears in this story, it is nevertheless a critical theme. Peter, the impetuous, big-mouthed disciple, gave in to fear and failed to acknowledge Jesus, failed to stick around for the bitter end. Now Peter is given the opportunity to face his risen Lord and begin again. In the words of hymn 304, forgiven, loved, and free. And this story offers some of the deepest implications of resurrection for us. We are forgiven. We are invited to start over. We are completely loved. And we have a job to do. This isn't only Peter's story, it's our story. When fear holds us back, love calls us forward. When we feel trapped by the way things have always been, Jesus invites us to cast our nets on the other side of the boat, change our perspective in light of the resurrection. So what does this mean for you? Are you held back from the abundant life Jesus promises by guilt, shame, and fear? If you understood yourself to be completely forgiven, completely loved, and completely free, how would that change the choices you make about your work, your money, and your relationships? The light of resurrection shining into us invites us to look clearly at how we have made choices out of fear rather than love, and to move away from fears that bind us. The implications of this story also resonate in our faith communities. Are we making choices about budget and mission based on our fear of failure, our guilt for past failures? Or are we pointed forward with the light of resurrection at our backs? If we are completely loved, completely forgiven, and completely free, what does this imply about how we are to feed the flock? We are called not only to proclaim God's love, known to us in Jesus, but to act on it. That means setting aside fear and the way fear binds us into small lives. Embracing love is the basis of every action we undertake. God's love, set loose in the world in the resurrection, needs our hands and feet and hearts to make it concrete in our place and time. Like Peter, we're invited to change our perspective and cast our nets where the love of God is available for us, and there's plenty for everyone. Jesus invites us, come and have breakfast. In the morning light of resurrection, there is no room for guilt and fear. We are forgiven, loved, and free. And we have some sheep to feed. The service continues with the Apostles' Creed, found on page 96, the Book of Common Prayer. Together, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord. He was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary. He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified and died and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day he rose again. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Our Father,
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
the suffrage is A. Show us your mercy, O Lord.
And grant us your salvation.
Clothe your ministers with righteousness.
Let your people sing with joy.
Give peace, O Lord, in all the world.
For only in you can we live in safety.
Lord, keep this nation under your care.
And guide us in the way of justice and truth.
Let your way be known upon earth.
Your saving health among all nations.
Let not the needy, O Lord, be forgotten.
Nor the hope of the poor be taken away.
Create in us clean hearts, O God.
And sustain us with your Holy Spirit.
O God, whose blessed Son made himself known to his disciples in the breaking of bread, open the eyes of our faith, that we may behold him and all his redeeming works, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever.
Amen.
Collect for Sunday. O God, you made us glad with the weekly remembrance of the glorious resurrection of your Son, our Lord. Give us this day such blessing through our worship of you, that the week to come may be spent in your favor. Through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
Collect for renewal of life. O God, the King eternal, whose light divides the day from the night, and turns the shadow of death into the morning, drive far from us all wrong desires, incline our hearts to keep your law, and guide our feet in the way of peace, that having done your will with cheerfulness during the day, we may, when night comes, rejoice to give you thanks. Through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Amen.
A collect for peace. O God, the author of peace and lover of concord, to know know you is eternal life, and to serve you is perfect freedom. Defend us, your humble servants, in all assaults of our enemies, that we, surely trusting in your defense, may not fear the power of any adversary. Through the might of Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Almighty and everlasting God, by whose Spirit the whole body of your faithful people is governed and sanctified, receive our supplication and prayers which we offer before you for all members of your holy church, that in their vocation and ministry they may truly and devoutly serve you. Through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Amen. We now have announcements.
Don't have very many today. Just a reminder that Father Rick will be back next Sunday, and we'll also start Bible study again at 9:45. I want to welcome all our guests, and please join us for refreshments after the service. We received a letter from the Reverend Canon Beth Ely and the Reverend Canon Truane Malone. And I'm going to read it to you. It won't take but a few minutes. It says, "Dear brothers and sisters of Christ," and she addresses all the churches in the area, Salisbury, Coulommiers, Fork, Mooresville, and Cleveland. It is Easter season, a time of new life, new vision, a time to recommit ourselves to the ministry of Christ in our lives and in our various congregations. The leadership of the diocese, including the canons for regional ministry, recognizes the need for a strong Episcopal presence in ministry, particularly in Rowan, Davie, and Iredell counties. We see each of you, striving in your own setting to bloom where you are planted, and discern God's will for your congregation's mission at this time in history. To whom does God call us to serve now? Where are the greatest needs? How do we continue to be a light of hope in a world that is less and less Christian, even in rural areas? Some of our congregations in the area are larger than others, but all struggle with limited finances, dropping attendance, fewer young families, and tired parishioners who seem to be the ones doing most of the work. Your diocese wants to be in the midst of the struggle with you. We would like to extend an invitation to you and your leadership, and it's open to anyone that would like to come, to join us April the 18th, which is next Thursday, from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Center for the Environment at Catawba College here in Salisbury. Our hope is to offer our skills to facilitate extended conversations over several months among our congregations in the area, pooling our creativity and passion to envision a cooperative way to doing more ministry together. If it is your desire, then your plans and dreams and hopes for the ministry of the Episcopal Church in Rowan, Davie, and Iredell counties will be the clay out of which you can model a new way of being Episcopalians together. We want to open ourselves to discern God's new thing with you. The plans, if any, will come from you, the people who know your neighbors' needs and cares. Remember what Jesus did with the loaves and fishes? If each of us brings to the conversation what we alone have to offer, mission and ministry will multiply, and more people than ever will hear about God's love for them. We are excited about the possibilities of this series of conversations and the potential to experience what God can do when churches of all sizes bring our gifts together for the mission of the gospel. This indeed is a journey into Galilee. And Brad and I are planning to attend, and I hope that there will be others of you that will attend. I feel that this is very important, and it'll be very interesting to see what we, as so many churches coming together, can do for each other and for those out there that need us. Anybody have any other announcements, John?
I'm becoming known for my one-word announcements.
I'm going to do better than that today. I have a no word announcement. It's not a test. It's not an eye chart.
Oh. Anybody else has anything? Thank you.
Strive for the Lord to honor to his name, bring offerings and come into his courts with praise. Page 392. In Peace we pray to you, Lord God. We pray for those serving to protect our country: Charles, Harvey, Hank, Jerry, Ronald, Will, Brad, Suzanne, and for all people in their daily life and work.
For our families, friends, and neighbors, and for those who are alone.
We pray for our companion diocese of Costa Rica and Botswana. We pray for the leaders of our country, Barack, our president, Matt, our governor, and Paul, our mayor, and for this community, the nation, and the world.
For all who work for justice, freedom, and peace.
For the just and proper use of your creation.
For the victims of hunger, fear, injustice, and oppression.
For all who are in danger, sorrow, or any kind of trouble.
For those who minister to the sick, the friendless, and the needy.
For the peace and unity of the Church of God.
For all who proclaim the gospel and all who seek the truth.
For Justin, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Catherine, our presiding bishop, Michael, William, and Chip, our bishops, Father Rick, our vicar, Beth, our regional priest and canon to the bishop, and Jane, our regional deacon. We also ask for your prayers for our Chip, our seminarian. And for all bishops and other ministers.
For all who serve God in His church.
For the special needs and concerns of this congregation. We pray for those who are unable to attend: Annie, Shirley, and Ed. We also pray for Herb and Nancy, Bill and Betty, Brian, Joe, Betty, Tara, Joe and Jean, Lynn, Jenny, Mariana, Benjamin, Fred and Carol, Pat, Taylor, Patrick, and Chris, and all those who are in our hearts. Hear us, Lord.
For your mercy is great.
We thank you, Lord, for all the blessings of this life, giving thanks especially for the anniversary of Damon and Naomi Bose. We will exalt you, O God, our King.
And praise your name forever and ever.
We pray for all who have died, that they may have a place in your eternal kingdom, remembering especially your servant, Jessica Gaither Gladden. Lord, let your loving kindness be upon them.
Who put their trust in you.
We pray to you also for the forgiveness of our sins. Have mercy
upon us, most merciful Father. In your compassion, forgive us our sins, known and unknown, things done and left undone. And so uphold us by your Spirit, that we may live and serve you in newness of life, to the honor and glory of your name. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
General Thanksgiving is found on page 101. be in the midst of them. Fulfill now, O Lord, our desires and petitions as may be best for us, granting us in this world knowledge of your truth,